Hi everyone, my name is Joanna, and I just wanted to share a short video clip and just talk about the role of negative emotions in our lives. I notice in my work a lot of pathologizing of negative emotions as being bad things. And in many ways I understand. They're very uncomfortable. And they're actually very uncomfortable for not only those experiencing them, but for the people around the individuals in a low place. And I noticed there's sort of a tendency to focus on rationality, and it's just again a time of kind of the bloated brain. Obviously most people are really accepting and honoring of the positive role that emotions play, primarily the ones that are enjoyable, like joy, happiness, enthusiasm, etc. But I see a tendency to really stigmatize the negative as though they are a bad thing, or that we have choices not to feel them. And this is my encouragement. First and foremost, negative emotions are really important. For me, they're really good indicators that a shift, some sort of pivoting is needed in a person's life. It could be that the situation that they find themselves in, a relationship, something is generally not in sync with what they want or need. And because of that, they have this very valid response of some sort of discomfort. We don't like to feel in discomfort. We start to pathologize being in that emotional state. And so sometimes not only do we kind of shut ourselves as far as I shouldn't feel this way or I should be happy, sometimes we can actually get that narrative from the people around us. There's just a great discomfort in knowing how to respond to people who are feeling negatively, or even how to take care of ourselves when we are experiencing a lower state. So the negative emotions become the problem versus the issue being the issue. So again, as I stated before, I really find that negative emotions are kind of the hallmark of something needing to change. They come from an intuitive sense that something's not matching. We often dislike them because yes, they are uncomfortable, but they also generally signal to us that we probably need a change. And sometimes we're just not wanting to consider that, or we're just not ready for that thought process. And so there's a tendency to reject them and everything that they are perhaps indicating to us. But I wanted to invite you just to really consider that they have as much merit, as much validity as the positive emotions. They're really actually still part of our intuitive process in letting us know that we're kind of getting off track. But they are really uncomfortable, and we don't like to be in those states, and so we often are scrambling trying to figure out how to get out. What I invite you to consider is there's no way to reframe a negative emotion. It's valid. So if you are responding to something that's not working for you, or you're just maybe in a phase of life that you're just not happy with, that's okay. Feeling comfortable with that is normal, and it's a valid response to the situation. So instead of focusing on how terrible you feel and how you wish you didn't feel terrible, one way is to just sort of refocus on ways you can make yourself feel better in that moment. You might not go from feeling really negative to really positive. That sometimes is not a realistic goal, but you can go from feeling really negatively to perhaps neutral or comfortable, and that's doable. And that simply is just by acknowledging and validating the emotional state you're in. So honoring your process, like, hey, I'm feeling really anxious right now, or I'm feeling really sad. We might not always know why, but the whys are not that relevant, and really refocusing on things that help us to shift emotional states. And I kind of addressed this in my mindfulness video, which just talks about strategies to kind of self-soothe and refocus. So those are ways to process a negative emotion. There's a tendency to avoid them, push them down, reject them, and just all around not deal with them. You just can't circumvent them. You can't get away from them. You can disconnect from them. You can numb from them. But they still exist. So even if you're not aware, they're there, and where we tend to store them is in our body. So the body is the warehouse of a whole bunch of emotions, typically negative ones, and at some point the body gets really tired of hosting these, and it can get overwhelmed and start to eject them out. And usually that's when people start to have tension headaches. They might have heart palpitations. They could have GI upset. All of this stuff is really common. There's a very strong link between the mind body. So we might not be cognitively aware of anything we're stressing about. We might not even feel an emotion, but the body can get really physical and start to manifest just sort of these physical symptoms. And I've known a lot of people who've gone to the doctors just trying to figure out what's going on, and they can't find really any underlying biological cause, and it's kind of ruled as being, they call it psychological, but I just say it's emotional. You know, we're dumping emotional energy in our body, and the body just can't hold it anymore, and it's the body is always trying to progress towards healing, so it's really natural for it to try to eject it out. And when it does, it's usually really uncomfortable. It's kind of a way of saying, knock knock knock, hello, something's off, like you need to take care of this. But due to our avoidance, we sometimes either one, don't understand the message, or two, just kind of don't want to deal and ignore it. So my encouragement is to learn how to manage the flow of negative emotions. All emotions are transient, meaning you're not, whether it's joy, sadness, happiness, anxiety, it will only last for so long, and then you will shift emotional states. So it's really helpful to learn the skills to manage the flow. So instead of disconnecting or avoiding, you just kind of lean in. And these skills aren't always taught. So it's helpful to learn these strategies. You know, I try to, in my video blogs, give some ideas on how to do that. You might know people who just seem to be more equipped or have learned the tools to do that. Therapy, a whole bunch of different coaching services are helpful. I'm really prone to advocating for even body work. Sometimes it's just really helpful to learn how to take care of the body, and by doing so, like, you can release emotions without it even being connected to thought. One of my backgrounds is in somatic experiencing, so I do that a lot, especially with trauma. But actually, most of us store stress somewhere in our bodies, so it's pretty common. So that being said, it's really important for people to, I think, just acknowledge the inherent value of negative emotions, understand that they're a signal that we're off track, learn strategies to manage the flow, learn strategies to kind of refocus. They're sort of the contrast, they create contrast to what we want. If you're feeling it, it's usually signaling that you're wanting something different. So you can, instead of look at what you're not wanting, really honor your process, figure out what it is you're experiencing, process it, and then also refocus to rebuilding. So if you're really missing or upset that something's not happening in your life, then refocus on how to incorporate that in step by step. It might just be tiny little choices, you know, and all of that is helpful. It's really helpful to just kind of move yourself out of that darkness and towards the light. Where I see people really struggle is when they're feeling stuck, when they're feeling like they don't like something, they're in a negative kind of mood pattern, and they just don't know what to do. You know, they're so focused on the end goal that they forget the merit and the value and the small steps needed to get towards that goal. So sometimes I just break it down to what's the next step? What's the next step towards what you want? You know, without expectation, what's one thing you can do to kind of get in alignment with movement and go and do that, and then do more of the same, and it starts a momentum. And usually once we're moving and feeling like we're more on the path towards what we want, our emotions turn positive. We kind of are more in alignment with ourselves and our goals, and we feel good. We might not be where our end goal yet, but we're headed that direction, and there's a lot of joy and peace in that. So I hope this was helpful. For me, I'm just really passionate about, again, the fact that negative emotions aren't the problem. The issue is the issue. That if you do find yourself in a negative emotional state, it's normal. If you find yourself anxious or in a kind of what seems to be a depressed mood, it's likely valid. It doesn't necessarily mean you're anxious or depressed, but evaluate, what are they signaling to you? Figure out how to incorporate that feedback and get back on track towards what you're wanting. And a lot of times, like I said, those emotions resolve themselves once you're headed the direction that you really intuitively know you need to be going. So I hope that's helpful. Feel free to like this video if you like it, subscribe. I have a lot more ideas for videos. If you have any commentary that would be helpful that you'd like to share, that'd be great. If you have any questions, again, my goal is to really be of service to all of you and to kind of create a community around these videos, to offer guidance and support and encouragement. So thanks for your time, and I hope you have the greatest of days.